Snow fell like ash over the city of Warsaw, coating the ruins in a soft deceit of peace. Beneath the skeletal remains of a once crowded street, Anna Zielinska knelt beside a broken window and pressed her camera lens through the gap. She took one careful photograph, click, the sound sharp as a breath in the silence, and then ducked down, heart hammering. The soldiers were closer now. She could hear them speaking German, brisk and efficient, their boots crunching over glass. The street beyond her lens was a graveyard of life. Burned-out trams lay like carcasses. A child's doll, one arm missing, stared up from a heap of snow. A red armband, the mark of a Jew, fluttered from a wire fence. Anna's fingers shook as she rewound the film, not from the cold but from the weight of what she had just captured. Every photograph now was a risk, every frame an act of defiance. She tucked the camera beneath her coat, whispering a prayer that Tomasz would have approved. Her brother had been the brave one, the journalist who believed words could fight bullets. Before the Gestapo came for him, he'd pressed her hand and said, "When the truth is silenced, the camera becomes the last weapon." She had laughed then, nervous and disbelieving. Now, crouched in the ruins with soldiers hunting through the snow, she realized he had meant it literally. A whistle cut through the air. Orders shouted. A flare burst overhead, painting the world in ghostly white. Anna didn't wait to see where it landed. She ran. The city had become a labyrinth of shadows and memories. Whole neighborhoods were gone, reduced to brick dust and splintered beams. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, a hollow sound, out of place in this war of iron and fire. Anna ducked beneath a shattered archway and darted into an abandoned cafe, where the windows were boarded with propaganda posters. Inside, a handful of people huddled around a single candle, a woman with a baby, two boys barely older than 15, and a man with a bandaged head who clutched a rosary. They looked up as Anna entered, wary and silent. "Don't worry," she said quickly. "I'm one of you." The bandaged man rose. "Everyone says that," he muttered. "I'm from the press bureau." "Underground," she added, showing her forged papers. They bore the seal of the Red Cross, a lie that might save her life. "I just need to get across the river." The man studied her for a moment, then nodded toward a narrow staircase in the back. "Basement door leads to the sewers. That's your road now." Anna hesitated. "And the Germans?" "Too many." He glanced at the ceiling as if he could hear them through the plaster. "They're cleansing the district. You've got maybe 10 minutes before this block burns." Anna tightened her scarf. "Then God help us both." He almost smiled. He stopped listening a while ago. The basement smelled of mildew and fear. Rats scurried between the pipes as she waded into the cold water of the sewers, her bag slung across her shoulder. She moved quickly, guided by the faint light of a lantern she'd stolen from the cafe. The tunnels echoed with distant explosions. Somewhere above her, an entire world was dying. When she emerged hours later, it was night. The snow had stopped. Across the frozen river, she could see the lights of the German command post in Praga district, a cold constellation of power. She had one contact there, Father Elias, a priest who worked with the resistance, smuggling refugees and information through his parish network. If she could reach him, the photographs Tomasz had taken might finally reach London. Maybe then the world would believe what was happening here. But even as she climbed the embankment, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Someone was watching. A tall figure in a long gray coat stepped from the trees, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "You should be more careful," he said in Polish, his tone dry. "Even ghosts leave footprints in the snow." Anna froze. The voice was achingly familiar. "Jakub," she breathed. Jakub Kowalski. Once her brother's closest friend. Once the man she thought she would marry, before the occupation tore everything apart. Before he began working with the Germans. Or so the whispers said. He approached slowly, his face pale in the moonlight. The cigarette trembled slightly in his hand. I didn't think you were still alive. Neither did I, she said, her voice colder than the river. Are you here to arrest me? He laughed softly. If I wanted to, you'd already be in a truck. No, Anna. I'm trying to keep you from dying tonight. By warning me, or delivering me. His expression faltered. You still don't understand, do you? There's more to this war than sides. There's survival. Spare me your philosophy, she snapped. You chose yours. I chose mine. Then at least listen to me before you throw your life away. He took a step closer. Father Elias was captured 2 days ago. The Germans know his contacts. If you try to reach him, you'll walk into a trap. Her heart clenched. How do you know? Because I was there. He dropped the cigarette into the snow. I tried to stop it. The world tilted. For a moment, the wind and the river's hiss drowned everything. Anna stared at him, unable to reconcile the man before her with the memory of the boy who once stole apples with her from the market, who once kissed her beneath the cherry trees outside her mother's house. You betrayed Tomasz, she whispered. I tried to save him. His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. They were going to execute 10 for 1. I thought if I gave them names from the list, old ones, already dead. But they took him anyway. He looked away, jaw tight. I know. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the river shifting beneath its crust of ice. Finally, Anna said, then help me finish what he started. Jakub's eyes lifted to hers. You're asking me to turn against everything that keeps me alive. I'm asking you to remember who you were before all this. He stared at her, and for an instant, she thought she saw the old Jakub again, the gentle humor, the fierce loyalty. But then it was gone, replaced by something harder. If I help you, we'll both hang. Then we'll hang for something that matters. The silence stretched, taut as wire. Then Jakub exhaled and pulled a folded map from his coat. There's a safe house on Grodzka Street, he said quietly. Run by a bookseller named Horowitz. Tell him I sent you. He'll get you out of the city. Anna blinked, stunned. You're serious. I must be losing my mind, he muttered. Go before I change it. She took the map, her gloved fingers brushing his. For an instant, they were just two people again, tired, frightened, bound by something they no longer had words for. Thank you, she said. Jakub turned away. Don't thank me. Just live. She left him there by the river, a solitary figure fading into the snow. Behind her, Warsaw burned anew, flames climbing into the night like a funeral pyre. She didn't look back. The bookseller's shop was hidden between two ruined tenements. Its windows were painted black, its door marked with a faded sign, Antiquariat Horowitz. Inside, the air smelled of dust and ink and the faint sweetness of candle wax. An old man looked up from behind a stack of books, his spectacles reflecting the flame. You must be Anna, he said in a low voice, before she could even speak. Jakub told me you'd come. Anna hesitated. You trust him? Horowitz smiled faintly. In times like these, trust isn't a luxury. It's a gamble. Sit down, girl. Warm yourself. He poured her a cup of tea that tasted faintly of apples. As she drank, he studied her with gentle curiosity. You carry something important. She nodded. Proof. Of what they're doing in the ghetto. He sighed, setting down his cup. You're not the first to try, but perhaps you'll be the first to succeed. There's a courier leaving for Hungary tomorrow. From there, the English may listen. Anna's chest tightened with cautious hope. What must I do? Horowitz leaned closer. Sleep. Eat. And trust no one who knocks after midnight. She managed a tired smile. I'll try. But as she lay awake in the back room that night, staring at the ceiling beams and listening to the distant thunder of artillery, Anna realized she couldn't rest. Not while Tomasha's film still sat in her pocket, unfulfilled. She rose quietly, wrapped herself in her coat, and slipped out into the darkness again, unaware that in the alley across the street, two shadows watched her leave. And one of them was Jakub. Jakub stayed in the shadows as Anna disappeared into the snowbound street, her figure flickering beneath the dying street lamps. He had told himself he would walk away, that this was no longer his war, no longer his burden. But when she turned the corner and vanished, something inside him snapped taut. He stamped out his cigarette and followed at a distance, his boots whispering against the frozen cobblestones. The other man beside him, a Gestapo sergeant in civilian clothes, watched with cold detachment. You recognize her, the German said softly. It wasn't a question. Jakub didn't answer. She's dangerous, the man continued. Your file says she worked with the underground press. And your superiors say she once carried photographs out of Warsaw. Photographs that could have caused problems. Jakub's hands clenched inside his coat pockets. She's just a courier now. She's a traitor, the German corrected, his accent clipped and sharp. And I would be very disappointed if your loyalties were compromised. Jakub turned, his eyes flat. You wanted me to find her. I did. The German smiled thinly. And now you will continue to do so. Don't forget, Herr Kowalski, our arrangement keeps you alive. Jakub said nothing, but his silence was its own rebellion. He watched as the sergeant turned and disappeared into the mist, leaving him alone in the alley with his guilt. He didn't want to betray Anna again. But survival had its own chains, and the Germans had been tightening them around his neck since the day he'd made the first compromise. Anna moved quickly through the ruined streets, her scarf pulled tight around her face. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to move. The night carried a brittle kind of quiet, the kind that came just before a storm, or a raid. Every sound felt magnified, the creak of distant doors, the rumble of an approaching truck, her own heartbeat drumming in her ears. She reached the edge of the Jewish ghetto, or what was left of it. Barbed wire glistened under the moonlight. Beyond it, the buildings were blackened husks, the streets eerily still. Once, she and Tomasz had crossed those fences to smuggle bread and medicine, now, there was no one left to smuggle to. Still, she felt drawn there, like a pilgrim to a tomb. As she stood by the wire, she heard a voice behind her. Looking for ghosts? Anna spun, pulling a small pistol from her coat, a weapon given to her by a resistance courier months ago. A man stepped into view, hands raised. He was tall and lean, with a scar across his cheek and a heavy coat dusted with snow. Easy, he said in Polish. Name's Marek. I work with the Home Army. She kept the gun steady. Prove it. He smiled faintly and pulled a folded leaflet from his pocket. It bore the emblem of the Armia Krajowa, a crowned eagle stamped in ink. Beneath it was a coded phrase, Nicz zajdzie Polska. Long live Poland. Anna lowered her weapon slowly. What are you doing here? Same as you, I imagine, trying to keep hope alive. His gaze drifted toward the ghetto ruins. We lost good people here. We come back sometimes. To remember. She studied him. There was a quiet steadiness in his voice, something that felt both trustworthy and tragic. I need to get to Hungary, she said finally. I have something the Allies must see. He nodded once, as if he'd been expecting her answer. Then you'll need a new identity and transport out of Krakow. I can help with both, but it'll cost you time we don't have. What do you mean? The Gestapo's sweeping the district tomorrow. They've been arresting anyone with ties to the resistance. If you stay, you'll burn with the city. Anna's stomach twisted. Then we leave tonight. He hesitated. There's a train. Supply route to Vienna. We have a man inside the rail yard who can hide you in one of the freight cars. But once you're on it, you'll be alone. She nodded. I've been alone for a long time. Merrick looked at her for a moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he said, meet me at the rail yard, platform 3, before dawn. Don't be seen. He turned to go but paused. And if anyone follows you, kill them before they kill you. By the time Anna reached the outskirts of the city, dawn was bleeding into the sky, a thin gray light over the skeletal rooftops. The rail yard stretched before her like an iron labyrinth, its air heavy with coal dust and the smell of oil. Workers moved between the freight cars, their breath steaming. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter, rifles slung over their shoulders. She spotted Merrick near a stack of crates, speaking quietly to a man in a conductor's uniform. He saw her and gave a subtle nod. This way. They led her to a boxcar marked with the insignia of the German army. Inside, beneath a false floor, was a narrow compartment filled with sacks of grain. Merrick handed her a canteen and a small cloth bundle. Food and water for the journey. It'll take 2 days. Anna hesitated. What about you? I'll stay behind, he said. Someone has to cover your trail. Before she could reply, he reached into his coat and pressed something into her palm, a silver locket. Inside was a photograph of a young woman and 2 children. My family, he said softly. They were taken to Treblinka last year. If you make it to London, tell them we fought. Anna closed the locket gently. I'll tell them. A whistle blew in the distance. Time was up. She climbed into the compartment, crouching among the grain sacks. Merrick gave one last glance around the yard, then shut the false floor over her. Darkness. The train jolted, metal groaning. Anna gripped the canteen and tried to steady her breathing. The rhythm of the wheel soon became hypnotic, click-clack, click-clack, like the ticking of a clock marking the seconds between life and discovery. Hours passed. She drifted in and out of uneasy sleep, haunted by fragments of memory, Tomasz laughing, Jakub's hand in hers, the firelight of their home before it was bombed to rubble. Then, suddenly, the train slowed. Shouts in German. Boots on metal. The compartment floor creaked as someone walked above her. Anna's breath caught. A flashlight beam sliced through the slats. Open it, a voice ordered. The false floor shifted. Cold air rushed in, and then a face appeared. Jakub. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were full of something between regret and resolve. Don't move, he murmured in Polish. I'm getting you out. Before she could speak, he turned and shouted in German, nothing here, just supplies for Vienna. He slammed the floor shut, then barked another order. The soldiers grumbled, one of them spitting into the snow before walking away. When the train started moving again, Anna exhaled, shaking. After an eternity, the false floor lifted again. Jakub crouched beside her, holding out his hand. Get up. We've got 10 minutes before the next checkpoint. She stared at him, disbelief warring with anger. Why are you doing this? Because I'm tired of being their dog. His tone was quiet, bitter. And because if you die, I'll never forgive myself. Anna hesitated, then took his hand. He pulled her into the freezing air, leading her toward a small maintenance hut at the edge of the tracks. Inside, he retrieved a bundle from behind a wall panel, a forged Austrian identity, a travel pass, and a pistol. These will get you across the border. And you, she asked. I'll find another way. He gave a crooked half-smile. I always do. The distant rumble of engines grew louder, German trucks approaching. Anna stepped closer, gripping the pistol. Come with me, Jakob. He looked at her for a long moment, then reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I can't. Not yet. Someone has to make sure the next Anna gets out too. She shook her head. You'll be killed. He smiled faintly. Then I'll die knowing I did one thing right. The sound of boots drew nearer. He turned, gun raised. Go, he hissed. Now. Anna hesitated only a heartbeat longer before running into the dawn, her coat flaring behind her, the snow swallowing her footprints as she disappeared into the open fields. Behind her, gunfire erupted. Hours later, she reached the border village of Zakopane. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and the mountains loomed like gray sentinels beyond the frost. A priest at the edge of town guided her to a safe house run by partisans. There, for the first time in months, Anna slept without the sound of bombs. When she awoke, she found her bag on the table, the strip of film still intact. For a long time, she stared at it, so small, so fragile, yet holding the weight of everything they had lost. She didn't know if Jakob was alive. She didn't know if Marek had survived the raid. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. The world would see these photographs. And it would remember. The courier's truck rattled through the Carpathian passes, its engine echoing off the snow-draped cliffs. Anna sat wedged between crates of contraband radios and sacks of potatoes, her coat stiff with frost. Each bend in the mountain road brought a new peril, ice, patrols, avalanches, but she felt no fear anymore. Fear had burned away somewhere in the ashes of Warsaw. All that was left was purpose. The driver, a bearded man who went by Rook, spat tobacco out the window. Once we cross the border, he said in rough Polish, you're on your own. Budapest isn't what it used to be. Germans are thick there too. I just need to find a man named Weiss, Anna replied. He works with the underground network. Rook grunted. Weiss. The one who prints false papers for the British spies? I've heard of him. Dangerous friend to have. All the good ones are. They shared a quiet, weary smile as the truck rumbled onward into the storm. By the time they reached Hungary, it was dusk. The Danube gleamed like molten steel beneath the bridge, its current swift and cold. Budapest was a city of half-darkness now, its cafés shuttered, its bridges guarded, its people whispering. The occupation had settled in like a disease. Posters of Hitler and Zalasi fluttered in the wind. Anna walked with a small satchel and her forged Austrian papers. She kept her head down, moving through the alleys toward the Jewish quarter where Weiss supposedly kept a printing press in the basement of an abandoned cinema. Every face she passed was haunted. The air smelled of fear and coal smoke. At last she found the cinema, a crumbling Art Deco relic, its marquee still bearing the faded words, Casablanca. She almost laughed at the irony. Inside, the air was damp, filled with the faint hum of machinery. A man emerged from the shadows, spectacles glinting in the dim light. You're late, he said in German-accented Polish. I've been late since Warsaw, she answered. His mouth twitched with reluctant amusement. I'm Weiss. You have something for me? She reached into her coat and placed the packet on the table. He unwrapped the twine carefully, as though handling an explosive. When he saw the film, his eyes widened. Good God! Are these real? They're all that's left of the ghetto. My brother took them before he was executed. Weiss stared at the negatives, the candlelight reflecting off his glasses. If this reaches London, the world will finally have no excuse. You may have just changed history. Then let's make sure it survives me. Over the next days, Anna helped Weiss develop duplicates of the photographs in his hidden lab. As the images emerged from the chemical trays, she felt her throat tighten. The faces were ghosts, the starving, the beaten, the dead. Children staring through barbed wire. Streets littered with corpses. Men digging graves for their neighbors. The horror was unbearable and necessary all at once. Weiss worked silently beside her. When they finished, he placed the dried photos in a metal case. "A British agent will collect these tomorrow night," he said. "You'll go with him. They'll fly you out." Anna hesitated. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "Someone has to stay and keep printing the truth." She wanted to argue but saw in his eyes the same quiet resolve she'd seen in her brother's. So she nodded. "Then may the world remember your name too." That night, she stood on the cinema roof, watching the city lights shimmer across the river. The moon hung low, pale and distant. She thought of Tomasz, his laughter, his belief in truth, and of Marek, whose locket still hung around her neck. And of Jakub. Jakub, who might still be alive. Or dead. She didn't know. But she could still hear his voice from that frozen dawn, "Then I'll die knowing I did one thing right." She closed her eyes and whispered into the cold air, "Please let that be enough." The following evening, she met the British agent in a cellar beneath a cafe. He was a lean man with kind eyes and an RAF insignia stitched discreetly on his cap. "Captain Howard," he introduced himself. "We've been expecting you." He examined the case of photographs, his jaw tightening as he flipped through them. "Bloody hell, this will tear the mask off everything they've been hiding." He looked at her with new respect. "You risked your life for this?" Anna's answer was simple. "For theirs." Howard nodded, closing the case. "We leave at dawn. There's an airfield outside the city. You'll be safe soon." But safe was a word that no longer meant anything. That night, she couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong, the silence too deep, the stillness unnatural. Her instincts, honed by months of running, screamed a warning. She rose, crept to the cellar door, and pressed her ear to the wood. Voices. German. She grabbed the case and darted through the back tunnel Weiss had shown her, emerging into the alley just as gunfire erupted. She ran, boots pounding the cobblestones, breath clouding in the freezing air. Searchlights cut across the buildings. Sirens wailed. She didn't stop until she reached the bridge, heart hammering. The Danube glared below, black and merciless. Across the span, soldiers were converging. And then she saw him. Jakub. He was on the near side of the bridge, shouting at the patrols, waving forged orders. His uniform was torn, his face bloodied. "Let her through," he barked in German. "She's my prisoner, by order of Major Henk." For one brief, impossible moment, their eyes met across the chaos. His look said everything, "Run." She hesitated. Then she ran. Bullets cracked the air. Jakub turned, firing back at the soldiers to draw their fire. The bridge shook under the thunder of engines. Anna reached the far end, breath ragged, and dove into the ruins of a tram station. Behind her, an explosion split the night, the bridge collapsing in fire and shrapnel. She screamed his name, but the wind carried it away. She never saw Jakub again. When dawn came, the RAF plane lifted off from a makeshift airstrip in the Hungarian hills. Anna sat in the back, clutching the metal case to her chest, tears carving tracks through the soot on her face. Below, Europe burned, a vast, wounded land swallowing the people she had loved. As the plane banked west toward the setting sun, Captain Howard spoke softly. "You've done something remarkable, Miss Zielinska. The world will know because of you." She didn't answer. The wind roared through the fuselage, and for a moment she thought she could hear Warsaw again, the cries, the bells, the defiant songs of a dying city. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass and whispered, "It wasn't me. It was all of them." London, 1944. The photographs made it to the Times and the BBC. When they were broadcast, the world paused. No one could look away from what they saw, the skeletal faces, the truth of genocide stripped bare. Governments that had turned a blind eye could no longer pretend ignorance. The images sparked outrage, investigation, and a slow, grinding reckoning. Anna watched from a crowded cafe as the announcer read the news aloud. Her name was never mentioned, the credit went to sources within the Polish resistance. That was how she wanted it. Her brother's face filled her mind, smiling, alive again in the justice of his work. But she couldn't rejoice. For every voice raised in anger, thousands were already gone. She stayed in London for the rest of the war, helping the Polish government in exile compile evidence for the Nuremberg trials. Her English improved, her hair grew streaks of silver, and she learned how to live with the quiet. At night, she sometimes dreamt of Jakub standing by the river, cigarette glowing like a star in the snow. Years later, after the guns had fallen silent, she returned to Poland. Warsaw was rubble still, but it breathed again. Children played among the ruins. People rebuilt with bare hands and broken hearts. Anna walked to what had once been her street, to the place where her house had stood. Nothing remained but the foundation stones. From her coat, she took out Marek's locket and buried it beneath a new cherry tree. Then she sat beside it and let the spring wind wash over her face. Somewhere nearby, a church bell rang, a sound she hadn't heard since before the war. That evening, as the sun set behind the skeletal skyline, a boy approached her with a letter. "For you, madam," he said, shyly. "A man left it at the post last week. Said it was for a woman named Zielinska who walks with the air of ghosts." She opened it carefully. The handwriting was rough but familiar. "Anna. If you're reading this, then I did not die on that bridge. They caught me. Prison, then camp. I don't know which year it is anymore. But I heard whispers that your photographs reached the world. That means it was worth it. Remember what we once said, by the river, before all the fire? We'll live in the truth, even if it kills us. You did that. You made it mean something. If I don't return, know this, I never stopped loving you. Not even when I was the enemy. Jakub." The letter ended there, smudged by water or tears. Anna folded it against her heart, eyes burning. Above the ruins, the wind carried the faint scent of cherry blossoms, the first in 6 years. She smiled through her tears. For the first time since the war began, she allowed herself to hope. Epilogue, 1950. In a small museum in London, behind glass, hangs a single black and white photograph, a girl standing amid the ruins of the Warsaw Ghetto, her hand lifted toward the light. Beneath it, the inscription reads, "Anonymous Photographer, 1943. The courage to remember." Visitors pass by without knowing her name. But somewhere, in the quiet corners of history, Anna Zielinska's spirit lingers, among the ashes and the blossoms, the ghosts and the living, reminding the world that truth, even in war, can be an act of love.